Here is the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath the NDC's rapid rise that almost nobody in the party's own communications wants to say plainly. The Nigeria Democratic Congress did not become Nigeria's fastest-growing opposition platform because of a coherent ideology, a long institutional history, or a grassroots movement that predates 2026. It became that platform because two men, Peter Obi and Rabiu Kwankwaso, needed somewhere to go, and a relatively obscure party with a clean legal slate happened to be standing in exactly the right place at exactly the right moment. The NDC's national leader, Seriake Dickson, has himself publicly acknowledged the danger in this arrangement, warning the party would not allow itself to become, in his words, a personality cult, political movement, or special purpose vehicle to be used and discarded. That warning was not abstract. It was aimed directly at the two men whose movements are now reshaping the entire party. Obi's obedient base and Kwankwaso's Kwankwasia network fused into what insiders call the OK movement. And of those two men, one carries a burden the other does not. Peter Obi is not simply a coalition partner. He is, by every meaningful electoral and symbolic measure, the load-bearing wall of the entire structure. If he leaves, defects, falters, or fails to deliver in 2027, there is a real and serious question about whether the NDC survives as a relevant national force at all. This video explains exactly why Obi's role is so structurally central and what that dependency actually costs the party's long-term democratic health. Before we go further, if you're new here, Naija Brief exists for one reason: to give Nigerians the political analysis that mainstream media won't. Whether you're in Abuja, Lagos, Kano, Port Harcourt, or London, this channel is for you. Hit subscribe and stay with me. This gets deeper. To understand why Obi's role is so structurally central, you need to understand precisely how the NDC arrived at its current moment, because the sequence reveals a party built deliberately and explicitly around solving two specific men's problems. By April and May 2026, both Obi and Kwankwaso found themselves trapped inside a collapsing ADC. The party's leadership dispute between factions loyal to David Mark and Ralph Arigbesola had triggered Supreme Court litigation that vacated an earlier injunction without resolving the underlying conflict, instead sending the matter back to the Federal High Court. One NNPP chieftain described the resulting legal uncertainty bluntly. Is that a good judgment? It is a trap ahead. There is no way the ADC will escape the trap. Sources close to Obi confirmed the calculation directly. Party leaders, including figures from the Turaki-led PDP faction within the coalition, concluded they shouldn't abandon the search for a safer platform, explicitly citing the need to beat Tinubu at his game. Into that vacuum stepped Seriake Dickson's NDC, offering what detailed reporting described as three elements neither Obi nor Kwankwaso fully possessed alone: legal stability, organizational blank space, and timing leverage. The party had no entrenched factional history, no pending court cases over its leadership, and crucially, an open structure that could be rapidly built around whichever national figures chose to join it. Reporting indicates the NDC formally offered Obi and Kwankwaso a joint ticket directly, giving them an explicit 2-week deadline to defect and secure the presidential slot, a remarkably blunt transactional courtship for a party positioning itself as Nigeria's moral alternative to APC dominance. Both men formally joined on May 4, 2026, receiving their membership cards after a closed-door meeting with party leaders, received personally by Dickson. Within 48 hours, 17 members of the House of Representatives defected from the ADC to the NDC during a single plenary session. On May 9, 2026, at the party's national convention in Abuja, delegates formally zoned the 2027 presidential ticket to the South for a single 4-year term, a decision explicitly understood and widely reported as boosting Obi's path to the candidacy specifically, with the North expected to produce the party's candidate in 2031. Now, let us examine with precision why Obi's individual presence is not simply important to the NDC coalition, but structurally load-bearing in a way that distinguishes him even from Kwankwaso, his closest partner in this arrangement. The numbers tell the first part of the story. Obi's 2023 presidential run secured over 6 million votes, a result widely credited with redefining youth-driven political mobilization in Nigeria. That base did not simply vote once and disperse. It organized, it persisted through Obi's subsequent moves across 4 different political platforms: Labour Party, then briefly considering a return to APCA, then ADC, then NDC, and it has continued to follow him specifically through each migration. This is the single most important fact about the entire NDC project. The party did not build the obedient movement. It inherited it, fully formed, the moment Obi walked through its doors. Compare this to Kwankwaso's contribution, which is real and significant, but structurally different. Kwankwaso brings a disciplined, geographically concentrated northern grassroots machine, the Kwankwasia network, strongest in Kano and pockets of the broader Northwest. It is a genuine organizational asset, but it is regionally bounded in a way Obi's national cross-regional youth-driven coalition is not. If Kwankwaso were to depart the NDC tomorrow, the party would lose a critical northern organizing capacity, a serious blow but a survivable one, given the party's other northern defections and Dixon's own political base. If Obi were to depart, the party would lose the singular asset that gave it national relevance in the first place, a 6 million vote national movement with no comparable internal NDC replacement. This dependency is precisely what the NDC's own internal messaging has tried awkwardly to manage. Dixon's warning against the party becoming a special-purpose vehicle to be used and discarded is an admission that the party's leadership understands its own structural vulnerability. A party whose national relevance depends overwhelmingly on retaining one man's personal coalition is not a party in the conventional institutional sense. It is a movement wearing a party's legal registration, and movements built around individuals are, by their nature, fragile in exactly the way Dixon fears. Now, if what I just told you surprises you, drop a comment below. I want to know your reaction before we get to the part that changes everything. Here is the clearest evidence yet that the NDC's leadership understands exactly how precarious its dependency on Obi specifically has become, and it arrived in the form of a remarkable internal policy unveiled just days ago. The NDC introduced a strict anti-defection requirement. Every candidate for elective office on the party's platform, including its own presidential candidate, must sign indemnity and affidavit forms committing to vacate their seat if they defect from the party after winning election. NDC National Chairman Senator Moses Cleopas was explicit about who this policy targets, naming Peter Obi himself, his running mate Rabiu Kwankwaso, and other recent high-profile entrants directly in his public remarks. If you contest an election under our platform and win, under no circumstances that you will just wake up to say that I don't like the NDC again and I am leaving the party. Read what this policy actually represents. A party is asking its own presidential candidate, the man whose personal 6 million vote coalition gave the party national relevance in the first place, to sign a legal document binding him to the platform even after winning office. This is not a normal act of party discipline directed at junior members. It is a structural acknowledgement built into formal party policy of the exact vulnerability this video has been describing. Obi's own documented history of party migration from APGA to PDP to Labour Party to ADC to NDC is precisely the pattern the indemnity policy is designed to prevent from repeating, this time with the presidency itself at stake. This is in effect the NDC trying to solve a structural problem through legal contract rather than through organic institutional loyalty. whether an affidavit can actually constrain a sitting president's political behavior, given the well-established constitutional ambiguities around defection that have played out repeatedly across Nigerian legislatures, including in the ongoing Rivers State Section 68 1G disputes, is a genuinely open legal question. But the policy's existence tells you everything about how seriously the NDC's own leadership takes the risk that its current success could prove temporary, contingent entirely on retaining the loyalty of the one man whose personal coalition makes the entire project viable.
Not everyone agrees with the premise that Obi requires this kind of coalition architecture to succeed in 2027. The Nigerian Labour Congress has publicly taken the opposite position, declaring that Peter Obi needs no coalition at all to win the presidency. That argument deserves serious engagement because it represents a genuinely different theory of how Obi's political strength actually operates. The NLC's implicit logic, consistent with broader obedient movement rhetoric since 2023, is that Obi's appeal transcends conventional party machinery entirely, that his 6 million 2023 votes were generated not through coalition building or legislative defections, but through grassroots digital mobilization, youth organizing, and a reputation for personal integrity that exists independently of whatever party label he carries. Under this theory, the NDC's institutional architecture, the anti-defection pacts, the zoning arrangements, the legislative defections is largely irrelevant machinery bolted onto a movement that was always going to succeed or fail based on Obi's personal connection with voters, not on party structure. There is a kernel of truth here worth taking seriously. Obi's 2023 performance genuinely did defy conventional Nigerian electoral logic, achieved with a party, Labour Party, that had essentially no prior national infrastructure. But the counter-argument has a significant blind spot. A movement-based 2023 third-place finish and a coalition-backed 2027 first-place finish are categorically different electoral challenges. Winning requires not just enthusiasm, but votes converted at scale across all 36 states, requires legislative allies capable of governing if victorious, requires legal and organizational infrastructure robust enough to survive the kind of institutional pressure that opposition parties, as the ADC's collapse and the ongoing NDC-targeted, Tinubu-sponsored crises allegations demonstrate, face routinely in the current Nigerian political environment. Pure movement energy without institutional scaffolding has historically struggled to convert into actual governing power in Nigeria's electoral system. The NDC's architecture, however contingent on Obi personally, is an attempt to provide exactly that scaffolding, a recognition that 2023's near miss requires structural reinforcement, not just a repeat of the same movement-only strategy. Three things to watch as the NDC's Obi dependency continues to shape the party's trajectory towards 2027. First, whether Obi formally signs and publicly commits to the anti-defection indemnity pact without visible hesitation. His willingness to bind himself legally to a party he has migrated away from 4 times previously would represent the clearest signal yet that this NDC arrangement is intended as a durable, final political home rather than another way station. Any visible reluctance or delay in signing would be read immediately by both supporters and critics as evidence the dependency concern is well-founded. Second, how the party manages internal tension between the obedient base and the broader NDC structure as the 2027 campaign intensifies. Reports of Tinubu-sponsored crises being seeded within opposition parties, a tactic NNPP figures explicitly warned would be replicated inside the NDC just as it was allegedly used against the People's Redemption Party, represent a genuine external threat that could test whether Obi's personal coalition could hold together under deliberate destabilization pressure, separate from any internal NDC dysfunction. Third, whether Kwankwaso's Kwankwaso network and Obi's obedient movement genuinely fuse into the unified OK movement political machine that the coalition needs to function as more than 2 parallel campaigns sharing a party label. Reporting has been explicit that this fusion, turning two leader-centered movements into a single coordinated political machine, is the actual, unresolved test facing the party, not a settled accomplishment. The Peter Obi factor is not simply about whether one man is popular enough to win an election. It is about whether an entire national opposition coalition, built rapidly, contingently, and explicitly around solving his and Kwankwasia's immediate platform problems, can mature into something institutionally durable enough to govern should it actually win. The NDC's own anti-defection pact, demanded of its own presidential candidate, is the clearest evidence that the party's leadership knows precisely how fragile that foundation currently is. Whether Obi proves to be the coalition's permanent anchor or simply its most recent vehicle remains, with 11 months until the election, a genuinely open question. And the honest answer to that question matters to Nigeria's democratic future than any single poll number currently does. If this analysis gave you clarity, share it with one person who needs to understand what is really happening in Nigeria. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next.